In a study of 122,000 adults, people in the lowest fitness category were 5 times more likely to die than those in the highest, not 20% more likely. 5 times. And what separated those two groups wasn't surgery, medication, or genetics. It was how efficiently the body used oxygen during physical effort, a measure called aerobic fitness. Almost no one over 50 is being tested for it, warned about it, or told how straightforward it is to improve. Aerobic fitness is shaped primarily by one type of exercise, not the most intense type, the kind where you can still hold a conversation while you do it. Researchers call it Zone 2 cardio. The evidence behind it spans decades, involves millions of subjects, and consistently points to the same conclusion. This is the most important physical capacity most older adults are not being told to protect. Your aerobic fitness is a stronger predictor of how long you'll live than your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and in some large studies, whether you smoke. In 2018, researchers published a paper in JAMA Network Open analyzing records from 122,000 adults sorted by aerobic capacity and tracked over time. The lowest fitness group had 5 times the all-cause mortality risk of the highest fitness group. There was no ceiling to the benefit. The fittest group still had lower risk than the group just below them. Every measurable step up in fitness carried additional protection. In 2022, researchers at JAMA Cardiology analyzed fitness records from more than 750,000 U.S. veterans, the largest cardiorespiratory fitness dataset ever assembled. Every incremental improvement in aerobic fitness was linked to a 13 to 15% reduction in all-cause mortality, regardless of age, body weight, sex, or existing health conditions. No age group was excluded from the benefit. Physician and longevity researcher Peter Adia has summarized the data this way. Being in the top fitness percentile for your age carries a 5 times lower mortality risk compared to being in the bottom quarter. No pharmaceutical intervention produces an effect of that magnitude. To understand why Zone 2 exercise produces these outcomes, it helps to understand what is happening inside the body as it ages. Every cell in the body contains structures called mitochondria, the organelles that convert oxygen and nutrients into usable energy. When they function well, the body has stamina, stable blood sugar, and efficient cardiovascular output. As mitochondrial function declines, so does the efficiency of every system that depends on them. This decline begins in the 40s and accelerates through the 60s and 70s. Dr. Íñigo San Millán is an assistant professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine and the performance director for the UAE team Emirates cycling team. He has studied exercise metabolism across both elite athletes and patients with metabolic disease, and he draws a clear distinction. There's an aging process where we lose mitochondrial function, and there's a sedentary component where we lose mitochondrial function. Those are two separate forces. One is biological, the other is behavioral. Zone 2, exercise activates a cellular pathway that directly addresses the behavioral component. During moderate aerobic effort, the body triggers a protein called PGC1-alpha, which stimulates the creation of new mitochondria and repairs existing ones. Dr. San Millán has noted that meaningful mitochondrial and metabolic adaptations are achievable by exercising 1 hour, 3 to 4 days per week, not elite training volumes and not high-intensity work. Zone 2 sits at roughly 60 to 70% of maximum heart rate. For practical purposes, it is the intensity at which you can speak in complete sentences while exercising, feel warmth and elevated breathing, but are not gasping. Taylor Somali, a senior health fitness coordinator at Houston Methodist, describes it this way. You're definitely working, and you're feeling heat building up in your body. You might be lightly sweating, but you can still carry on a conversation and talk in full sentences. She adds that most Zone 2 sessions should leave you feeling more energized than when you started, not depleted. For most adults in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, Zone 2 is brisk walking at 15 to 20 minutes per mile on flat ground. casual cycling, steady pace swimming, or an elliptical at moderate resistance. These are activities that can be sustained, that carry low injury risk, and that produce the consistent aerobic stimulus the research requires. The fitness culture of the past 4 decades has pushed hard against this. The message, "No pain, no gain, go hard or go home," shaped how most people in this age group think about exercise. The research does not support it as a template for cardiovascular health. Elite endurance athletes, among the most aerobically fit people alive, spend approximately 80% of their weekly training time in Zone 2. The high-intensity portion is a small fraction. The base is built at moderate effort week after week, sustained over years. For adults over 50 with longer recovery times and less margin for injury, the case for that approach is even stronger. 50 to 70% of what most people accept as inevitable aerobic aging is not driven by biology. It is driven by inactivity. People who maintain consistent aerobic exercise throughout their lives decline at roughly half the rate of their sedentary peers. Adults who begin Zone 2 exercise in their 60s after years of inactivity consistently show aerobic fitness improvements of 15 to 20% within 3 to 6 months. The metabolic implications of low aerobic fitness extend well beyond stamina. More than 1 in 3 adults over 60 show some degree of impaired glucose metabolism. Zone 2 exercise improves insulin sensitivity by enabling muscles to take up glucose without requiring insulin as an intermediary. A large study using National Health and Nutrition Examination survey data, nearly 14,000 adults, found that people with type 2 diabetes in the highest fitness category had all-cause mortality rates as low as or lower than non-diabetic adults in the lowest fitness category. Fitness modified the mortality risk of the disease itself. Regular aerobic exercise is also correlated with meaningful reductions in blood pressure, triglycerides, and inflammatory markers including C-reactive protein. Chronic low-grade inflammation is understood to accelerate cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and other conditions associated with aging. Aerobic exercise reduces it without pharmaceutical side effects. The neurological evidence is equally well documented. In 2011, a randomized controlled trial led by Dr. Kirk Erickson, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, divided 120 older adults into 2 groups. One performed aerobic exercise, the other did stretching. After 1 year, the aerobic exercise group showed a 2% increase in hippocampal volume, the region of the brain most associated with memory. The stretching group showed continued hippocampal shrinkage. The researchers calculated that this represented a reversal of 1 to 2 years of age-related brain volume loss. Dr. Wendy Suzuki, a professor of neuroscience and psychology at New York University, has described the mechanism. Aerobic exercise triggers the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which promotes the growth of new neurons and strengthens connections between existing ones, particularly in the hippocampus. Observational studies consistently show that people who exercise more in middle and older age have a lower probability of developing dementia. Dr. Suzuki, whose father died from Alzheimer's disease, has stated that her goal in exercising is not to cure the disease, but to maintain as much hippocampal volume as possible so that the disease, if it comes, will take longer to affect her memory than it otherwise would. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65 in the United States. In 2024, more than 43,000 older Americans died from fall-related injuries, a 51% increase over the preceding decade. The financial cost of non-fatal fall injuries now approaches $80 billion annually. Falls are not primarily a matter of environmental hazard. They are a consequence of degraded balance, reaction time, and neuromuscular coordination, systems that aerobic fitness directly supports. Stanford medicine clinicians have identified the 60s and 70s as the period when investing in physical capability has the greatest preventive return, before those systems deteriorate to the point where a single misstep becomes a serious injury. A network meta-analysis of 82 randomized controlled trials involving more than 5,300 adults averaging 65 years of age found that aerobic exercise reduced symptoms of depression to a degree comparable with antidepressant medication. A separate umbrella review of prior meta-analyses reached the same conclusion. The effect was largest in group exercise settings, a finding the researchers attributed partly to the role of social contact in mental health among older adults. The World Health Organization updated its physical activity guidelines in 2020, recommending that adults over 65 accumulate at least 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate-intensity aerobic activity. Zone 2 qualifies. 150 minutes is 5 30-minute sessions per week, or 3 sessions of 50 minutes, or a daily walk of 21 minutes. Dr. San Milan's research-based recommendation for meaningful metabolic and mitochondrial adaptation is 3 to 4 sessions of 45 to 90 minutes per week. He has also noted that training twice a week is likely to maintain current fitness, while training 3 or more times a week produces measurable improvement. A 2022 study found that 110,000 deaths annually among adults 40 and older in the United States could be prevented if those adults added just 10 minutes of moderate physical activity per day. The CDC reports that nearly 31% of adults over 65 with at least one chronic disease are physically inactive, a figure that rises to 37% among those 75 and older. The World Health Organization has classified physical inactivity as a silent pandemic, affecting approximately 1.8 billion adults globally. Before starting or changing any exercise routine, particularly for anyone managing cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, joint conditions, or other chronic illness, a physician should be consulted first. Zone 2 is moderate by design, but individual health circumstances vary enough that personalized medical input matters. The aerobic decline that most adults in their 50s and 60s are already experiencing is not primarily a product of aging. It is a product of reduced activity. The body continues to respond to aerobic stimulus well into the 60s and 70s, producing improvements in cardiovascular function, metabolic health, brain volume, and fall risk that are documented in controlled research involving hundreds of thousands of participants. The exercise that produces those adaptations is moderate, sustained, and repeatable, the kind where a conversation is still possible, and the kind most people have been incorrectly told isn't enough. The research has established what works. The prescription is 150 minutes a week, at a pace where you can still talk.